Hi, this is Dave, Feld Running Guide. Welcome to a navigation skills tutorial. And this tutorial is about types of map. The aim of this tutorial is to help you understand the common types of map used by hill walkers or fell runners, to understand the differences between the maps and choose which is best for you based on the activity that you're going to be doing. And we'll also look at the pros and cons of using online mapping as opposed to traditional map and compass. I've made the tutorial with Anket mapping software, and the extracts taken from it are in agreement with Harvey maps. So what types of map would we use as fell runners or hill walkers? Generally we've got a choice of two. So we've got the Ordnance Survey maps, shown here, the Land Ranger and the Explorer, and we've also got something called Harvey maps. So generally a choice of two. We might also find maps that are made especially for certain races. These are also made by either Harvey's or Ordnance Survey. So here are a couple of examples. We've got on the left the Ras-y-Aran fell race made by Ordnance Survey, and on the right hand side the Great Lakes fell race map, and that's a Harvey map. So which map are we going to choose for the running that we do? Well, if we were doing a race, it would make sense to have a specific map for that particular race. And these can have some really useful details on them. So if we look at this Great Lake map, we can see that here that red line is shown as an escape route. That'd be really useful if we get halfway around the race and decide we want to escape, or the weather changes and gets really bad. It also got information such as checkpoint and checkpoint number and some route options. So that would be a good map to choose for doing a race. So if we assume that we're not going to use a race map, we just want to choose a map for the walking or running we do, then which one is best? Well, really it depends on how much detail we want, and that's going to help us choose the right scale. I'll do a separate tutorial on scale in more detail. So here are some examples of scale. On the Ordnance Survey, the Land Ranger map, these are 1 to 50,000. We've got the Explorer map at 1 to 25,000. Now Harvey's make maps of different scales, sometimes 1 to 40,000, as in this British Mountain maps, but they also make them at 1 to 25,000 as well. Now it doesn't matter what map we use, they've all got grid squares on them, and a grid square is 1 kilometre or 1,000 metres of land. So let's have a look at an example. This is an extract from the 1 to 50,000 map. And on this map, 2 centimetres of map represents 1 kilometre of ground. So the grid lines are 2 centimetres apart on this map. And then on the 1 to 25,000 map, 4 centimetres of map represents 1 kilometre of ground. So the grid lines are 4 centimetres apart on the 1 to 25,000. So obviously we can get much more detail in a 4 centimetre square than we can in a 2 centimetre square. So we as runners need to decide how much detail we want from the map that we're using. So what details are we talking about? Well, the arrow there is pointing to a black line. And a black line is a boundary such as a wall or a fence line. Here the arrow is pointing to this shaded line here, and that's actually the boundary of access land. Here the arrow pointing to water features, the water feature there. So here we've got the two maps side by side, and we can look at the arrows and see how the features aren't shown on the 1 to 50,000 map. On Harvey maps, there's an interesting thing to note regarding boundaries, so walls and fences, is they're shown in different colours depending on their state of repair. So a well-maintained wall is shown as a dark black line, so that's these here, whereas the remains of a wall or a fence or a ruined wall are much lighter grey lines, so you can actually tell the difference between them. So if you're expecting to see a great big high gritstone wall, well, it's going to be a black line rather than a grey line. So it depends what we're doing when we're running or walking. If we don't need to navigate by precise features, then the 1 to 50,000 map might be fine. However, if we're looking for precise features, so say for example we did want to go over here and look for some of these little stream junctions and things like that, more orienteering style navigation, then the 1 to 25,000 map would be the best one. It's actually worthwhile becoming familiar with all different types of map, because some of the symbols change depending on which map you use. So for example, this is the Harvey's 1 to 25,000, and this red dot here is a public footpath, public right of way is a footpath, and these black dashed lines are known paths on the ground. The contour lines on the Harvey map, they go up in 15-metre intervals, so each one is 15 metres higher or lower than the previous one. If we look on the Ordnance Survey 1 to 25,000, then the public footpath, the public right of way, is shown as a green dash, and known paths on the ground are these very small little black dashes. And on this particular map, the contours go up in 10-metre intervals. And then the Ordnance Survey 1 to 50,000, we'll see this public footpath here is a red dashed line, and the known paths are these longer black dashes, and again on here the contour interval is 10 metres, so they go up in tens. Now in the past we had to go out and buy a paper map, that was our only option, but nowadays we've got the option of using online mapping. So some examples are Ordnance Survey, Enquete and View Ranger. And with these you can pay for various levels, either just buying just one map or having the whole of the country to download onto your phone. I'll put these links in the YouTube description on the video. Okay, so are there any advantages of having an online map as opposed to a paper map? Well, there are a few. Firstly, printing. Rather than to take the whole map out with you and wrestle with it in the wind and try to carry it if you've not got a rucksack with you, you could just print out a little section that you wanted and use that. So it's much more handy in that respect. Also, your map doesn't get worn out and damaged. You just print out the bit you want, and when that bit of map becomes tatty, you just print another one. I like to print them out and laminate them so they last a little bit longer. Another really useful thing is route planning. So for example, on this map here you can see I've planned a route here, and the map software tells me things like distance, minimum maximum height, estimated time based on the parameters that I put in there to tell it how fast I'm covering the ground, and it'll give us total ascent and total descent. That's a really useful tool I find for planning a route out, working out where to go, how long it's going to take me, how much elevation there is, things like that. Another thing, once I've been out for a run, I can use my Garmin watch and take the data off that and then upload it onto my mapping software and see where I've been and that kind of thing. And also with the map itself is you get regular updates. So if something changes on the map, say for example something gets built, they build a new path somewhere, then once the map gets updated by Ordnance Survey, then automatically, if you've got an online subscription, that updates so your map doesn't become outdated. Okay, are there any advantages of having mapping software on your phone rather than using a paper map? Well, yeah, I think there are. So this is a screenshot taken from my phone, and I had the software running whilst I was running, and the blue line is the route that I took. The blue circle is a point where I was when I took the screenshot. So it can really accurately tell you where you are and show you where you've been. So that's really useful. This is another screenshot that I could scroll through. So there it gives me a very accurate, that's an 8-figure grid reference, the amount of time that I've been running for, the distance that I've covered, average speed that I've been running at, and then you even get things like compass direction and altitude. So some really useful information there. Now it doesn't need phone signal to work, but it does need your location setting turned on, and obviously it needs your phone to have battery. So we've all heard of people relying on mapping on the phone and the battery dies. Not a good thing. Also bear in mind, going out in winter when your battery gets really cold, it might die sooner than you expect it to, and that's no good if you're totally reliant on this software rather than using it alongside a paper map. Now there's one thing that I really like using the mapping software for, and that is as a learning tool. So the example here, this is for a night navigation course that I organised. I had a couple of runners, and the idea was to get from A over to B. So they were to try and follow a compass direction over rough ground at night, southwesterly to here. And the purple line is actually the route that they took. So they thought they were heading southwest, and we can see within these blue circles there was 2 occasions when they were heading actually due west. So they weren't paying attention to the compass bearing that they were meant to be following. Now they didn't realise that, but afterwards when we reviewed it, I showed them where they'd actually been, and that kind of opened their eyes, made them realise how important it was to keep your eye on the compass when you're navigating at night. So really good learning tool. Okay, so that was your tutorial. I'm now going to ask you a few questions, see what you've learnt. Okay, question number 1 then. What map is that? So what the name of the map and the scale of the map, and how can you tell? The answer is, it is the Ordnance Survey Explorer map. It's the 1 to 25,000. How do we know that? Just by looking at the extract. Well, we can tell because the public rights of way are green dashes. Next question. What distance is shown by the red arrow? So if you were to start at the tail of the red arrow and walk to the point of the red arrow, how much distance have you covered, and how do you know? Why are you giving that answer? And the answer is 1.5 kilometers, because on that map a grid square is 1 kilometer and you've covered 1.5 squares, so that must be 1.5 kilometers. Next question. On this Harvey map, what is the vertical interval between contours, i.e. what do they go up in? And your answer is they go up in 15-meter intervals. So between every thick contour line, every bold contour, you've got an elevation change of 75 meters, so 15-meter intervals. Next question, this is a Harvey's map. So what distance does 1 square represent? Now the answer is 1 kilometre or 1,000 meters. There's no difference between Harvey maps and Ordnance Survey maps, and scale of maps, either 1 to 50, 1 to 40, 1 to 30, 1 to 25. 1 grid square is always 1 kilometre. Okay, this question then, if you want to go out and you want to know where access land is, which map are you going to choose? So what is the name of the map and what scale of the map? We've already mentioned that before. It's the Ordnance Survey 1 to 25,000. And you can see the access symbol there shown as a highlighter pen type symbol. Okay, next question. What advantage does buying mapping software have over buying a physical map? Well, one good thing is printing. If you've got the mapping software, you can print out particular bits of map. You can print them out as many times as you want, and you're not just reliant on one particular map that might get dog-eared and tired, and you might even lose it. Great for route planning, so you can plan a route beforehand, work out time, distance, elevation, that kind of thing before you actually go and do it. Really useful if you've got the mapping software on your phone. You can get an accurate grid reference when you're out there on the hill, tell you exactly where you are. You can even see exactly where you've been. If you've got a map subscription, and the map gets updated, so does your map. So you don't end up with a map that's maybe 10 years out of date and some of the walls and fences aren't on it anymore. Also, you can use the software as a great learning tool to review after you've been out. You can see if where you went is actually where you thought you were going. And what about the disadvantages of using mapping software over actually going out with a physical map? Well, I'm sure we've all heard stories of people relying on their phones for telling them where they are, and then the battery died because it was cold or it wasn't charged. And also, you just rely on using your phone all the time to tell you where you are, you become less self-reliant. You're less likely to look at the map and work it out for yourself. So you might lose those skills that you would have if you were using good old-fashioned map and compass. Okay, so that's the end of your tutorial on different types of map. I'll be doing more tutorials on other topics, so look out for them. Thanks for watching.